Thank you, Mr President. I'll begin by thanking the Honourable Jerry Candelars and the Honourable David Ridgway for their contributions. And I will say that, of course, there is no surprise in the Honourable Jerry Candelars' contribution. These are government regulations, so of course they're going to defend them. But I've got to say that I am gobsmacked by the Liberal approach, which is at complete odds with what they said before the election. And I remind members that the press release issued by Stephen Marshall back on the 14th of February 2014 was headed, "Liberals will return planning powers to councils." That's what disallowing these regulations do. They return the planning powers to councils. Now, I read some of the press release when I introduced the bill, but what I didn't refer to were some additional comments that were made by the Liberal Party in an interview within Daily back on the 13th of February. An article by Liam Mannix. It says, planning powers for multi-storey development would be handed back to inner city councils under a state Liberal policy announced this morning. Mr President, you cannot get any clearer than that. The Liberals said before the election that they would do exactly what I have just attempted to do, and that is to hand those powers back. The article goes on, a string of planning changes by the state government late last year substantially reduced the role of local government in approving multi-storey developments with the aim of speeding up high-density development in the inner city. Under the regulations released in October, which came as a surprise to many councils, the state government became the approval authority for developments of more than 4 storeys in the city and inner rim. Shadow Planning Minister Vicky Chapman this morning told in Daily she'd hand many of these powers back from state to local government. The quote from Vicky Chapman, "Local councils should remain in the planning assessment role," she said. "We have confidence they can do it. We don't think there's any necessity for there to be a transfer of that responsibility to a state agency. They, being local councils, would give the public a right to be consulted before decisions are made, right from the start, and not just have state imposition, which is what we're so angry about. It would reintroduce local knowledge to local decision-making." So there you have it, Mr President. The Liberals have absolutely backflipped on what they said they would do before the election. Now, I know I'm focusing on them. I'm cross with the government because these are bad regulations, but the Liberals, it is inexcusable. The message to the local community is you cannot trust the Liberal Party on planning. They say something before the election and they vote a different way afterwards. And I have to remind members that these regulations are opposed by every single local affected council, every single local residents group in the affected areas oppose these regulations, and many dozens of them wrote to you all as members of the Legislative Council urging you to support this disallowance motion, and you have ignored them, you have let them down, and what's worse, you have lied to them in relation to the statements made before the election. But if we think this is the end of it, it's not. We know that the state government started their crusade against local councils by first of all stripping Adelaide City Council of developments worth $10 million. Next, they decided to strip the inner rim councils of their ability to approve more than 4-storey developments. But what we now have, and we'll be debating this next Wednesday, what we now have is an attempt to remove all developments worth more than $3 million from local councils back to the Development Assessment Commission, because they're regulations that were tabled in this place yesterday. Now, people might think, well, no, that won't happen. I tell you what will happen. Developers who want to develop to a value of more than $3 million will effectively go to a public servant, say they don't trust the local council, and the public servant will say, right, we'll send your project to the Development Assessment Commission. Now, the Honourable David Ridgway mentioned the fact that we have an expert panel on planning reform, and that therefore that somehow justifies agreeing with all the ad hoc changes to the planning system that the government's introducing before Brian Hayes and his panel have even reported. Now, I've been going along in good faith to these meetings, meeting with the expert panel, talking to them about changes, and yet the government doesn't give 2 hoots about that process. They don't care that citizens in good faith are debating changes to the planning scheme, because they're just going to keep introducing changes outside this process until somebody stops them. And don't look to the Liberals to stop them, because they won't. Submissions to the expert panel close on the 26th of September, And I don't think people will be thinking, well, what does it matter what we tell them? The government's just going to do what it wants anyway, as it did with these regulations and the ones that we're going to be debating next Wednesday in Parliament. Another disallowance motion to make sure that local councils stay in the process. So I'm very disappointed in the approach of the Liberal Party, and I can tell you the community will be as well. I look forward to seeing Vicky Chapman attend a meeting of the Burnside Residents Association, one of the groups that wrote to members of Parliament saying, please support this disallowance, please support local council involvement in planning. They're going to be very disappointed, but it's very clear to me that the Liberal Party and the Labor Party are far more scared of the development lobby than they are of communities and citizens and residents associations. People have a right to feel very let down by this decision, but I can say on behalf of the Greens, we won't be giving up, and we will insist in this place on proper planning processes and making sure that laws are changed only for the best reason and following full consultation, not the way this government's approaching it.
Motion. All those in favour?
Aye.